Good evening and welcome everybody tonight to Advancing Biliteracy in the Classroom through Hands-on Activities. We are so excited to have Catherine, oh goodness,
Melbauer.
Melbauer. I was like, we had practiced it before and I was like, okay, now I'm gonna butcher it. Melbauer, and it was just the perfect pronunciation too. And I still messed it up. Well,
It's
thank
okay.
you. Thank you so much, Catherine. Catherine's a first grade teacher, and she teaches at a very unique school called the DePaul School in Louisville, Kentucky. And she's going to tell you more about that school, but it's a school for special needs. So she has a unique view. I cannot wait to hear on biliteracy and using hands-on activities to increase all students, no matter their needs. These are things that are going to benefit all of our students. So I am going to record the session today. We are also monitoring the chat box, so make sure that you put any questions or comments in there that you have, and we will get to those. At the end, there will be a short questionnaire for you to fill out when we close the session. It will pop up. So please fill that out and just let us know how we can improve. And thank you again, Catherine. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you. So, like it was said, I do teach first grade at the DePaul School. Our school is specifically for students with learning disabilities, such as dyslexia. Many of my students also have dysgraphia or dyscalculia, or ADHD, ADD, all of those kind of mingle together and create this amazing school culture for kindergarten through 8th grade here in Louisville, Kentucky. This is my 4th year teaching. This is also my 4th year with these kiddos. I currently have 8 boys in my classroom, no girls. It's a lot, but I love them. And they all have different needs and learning targets. And I am the only first grade teacher, so I have to break them up in groups and things like that to get them started on the path of being on first grade level and then being ready for 2nd grade. When designing my lesson plans, I focus on the pacing, how long are we doing things, how fast are we doing things, when are we doing things even, different activities and such, and then also being multisensory. So getting our hands involved, our bodies involved, songs, different things like that are all part of our daily classroom routine. And obviously with multisensory, it includes hands-on learning. And then that's me in my classroom with all the boys' favorite books. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about what biliteracy is, effective hands-on learning, hands-on materials and manipulatives that you probably already have in your classrooms, using Nystrom World, and then a couple of activities such as board races, desktop atlases, board atlases, question and answer matching, and then hands-on worksheets as well, or making a worksheet hands-on. So let's get started. What is biliteracy? To simply put it, biliteracy is being able to read and write proficiently in 2 languages. Fluency is in both reading and writing are present when an individual is biliterate. Hello, welcome. An individual that is biliterate is also considered bilingual, but a person who is bilingual is not necessarily biliterate. Just kind of depends. A person who's bilingual maybe only be able to speak the language, not be able to read or write in it. So those are things that to be considered biliterate, you have to be able to proficiently read and write with fluent and make sense in that language, or the 2 languages. Alrighty. Now my favorite part, the effective hands-on learning. Hands-on activities for learning should require students to not only use their hands to manipulate things or move things around, but it engages their minds in a way that allows them to be invested into their learning. It can be done on a smaller scale, maybe just a little desktop activity or a file folder game, or it can be done on a larger scale where the whole class is involved into the learning. The great thing about making things, these activities hands-on, is that if you can find a way to reuse them, you can use them for many different kinds of lessons, many different lessons, and for many years across, and then it can be across developmental levels, subjects, and I find that once they're made, you don't really have to go back and make them again, especially if you laminate. Lamination is a teacher's best friend. But my biggest thing is that it doesn't have to be fancy or Pinterest worthy. It doesn't have to be this cute, over the top, elaborate thing. It can be something as simple as I cut a couple sheets of paper and I've written some notes on it, or I've written something across it, and the students have moved them around on their desk. The important thing is that it's meeting your learning targets and your goals for your lesson and for your students. Some hands-on materials and manipulatives that I use, particularly in social studies. I have, fly swatters, magnet litters, tiles, Unifix cubes, magnifying glasses, and these are just the few things that I had actually had out earlier this week. But I also have many more materials to my disposal. But what I find the most effective is establishing rules and expectations. Before I hand out materials, I will review or introduce expectations for that particular material. I also require my students to keep their materials at rest, meaning until I give them a direction, they have to stay still and they can't touch them. So being that a lot of my kids are impulsive because many of them are ADHD, I have them either sit on their hands or I present them with a self-control challenge. And they are supposed to not touch them. And if they don't touch them, then they get a sticker or some kind of reward. Many of them can't resist that temptation, but will try really, really hard for that reward. I do have one student that when I present a self-control challenge, he closes his eyes and puts his head down, so he's not even tempted to touch it because he can't see it, which I thought was very, very smart of him. But establishing those rules and what your expectations are will allow the lesson to go much smoother. If I'm introducing a new material to my students, I allow them for a few minutes, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, to build, investigate, kind of explore what maybe we might be doing with the material. And then I will give them a minute to reorganize that. And then we'll talk about what we're doing with it. And we'll go on to the directions and into the lesson. When the lesson's over, I always show my students how to put the materials away properly so that they're organized and ready for the next time. I also give that responsibility to them so that when they have cleaned up, they feel like they've accomplished something, that this was their materials and they took care of it. And then they also know where it is when we get them back out. So now I want to ask you guys, what are some materials that you have in your classroom that you could use for different hands-on activities that you can just think of off the top of your head right now? I'm going to look at the chat and see if anybody is participating in that. Legos, perfect. I am a big fan of Legos. My kids are too, obviously, with the 8 boys. We do have those in the classroom. Can actually build some topographical things with Legos. Anybody else? I will share a few of mine just besides the fly swatters and the Unifix cubes. I have A lot of base 10 blocks, paper, squares are a good one. Any kind of learning material, I've been able to come up with some kind of way to make it multisensory in other subjects other than just math, because I think a lot of people think of multisensory and hands-on materials with math, but I use them in language science, social studies, math. We have a class for social skills, and we use it for that as well. One other thing that I'm just now thinking of that I've used before is little counter chips and dice. Those are always good. So I'm going to go on to our next topic, which is how to use Nystrom World. And I've taken some screenshots here. When you log in, you'll see this screen. We're going to explore the geographer part first. It's a bunch of different maps and different tools you can use, layering, drawing tools, and a picture glossary. So when you click on the geographer symbol, which is this world, look at square, circle symbol, you get these kinds of maps will come up. And over on the side of your screen, was where you can select. So if you click this little map here, you have some different options. You can zoom in and out so that instead of seeing just one continent, you can see the whole world. This map is of the United States, and you can zoom in and show your kids the different capitals, things like that to select. And then also with some of these tools, there are some different layers and stuff that you can choose to show political boundaries, continents, things like that, names of continents and things. So now there's also at the home screen the option for the researcher, which is your atlases and activities, which is what we're going to kind of focus on today. Once you've logged in and you select the researcher option, it will lead you to a wide selection of atlases in both English and Spanish. So here's the home screen for all the different atlases that you can choose. These are just the first three when you pull up Nystrom World. And then here is one of the atlases in Spanish, and then the same atlas in English. So you can use the same atlas in different languages, which is really great for switching those out and rotating and advancing that biliteracy in your classroom. And there are several different kinds of atlases. This one was one that I saw would most align with what my kiddos were working on this week. So one of the things that I use, and there are 6 of my 8 boys, I don't know where the other 2 I think are in desks behind them, but we were working on directionality and things like that. So I got out the fly swatters and I pulled up one of the atlases and zoomed in for them. And so I chose my atlas, I got my groups together, and I grouped them in a way that I had the same level of processor on the same going against each other. So my faster processors would be paired to go against each other, and my slower processors would be paired to go against each other. So no one was feeling like they just weren't getting it and everybody else was, which is just really knowing your kids and that kind of thing. So these fly swatters I actually got at the dollar store. They're, fun. They like them. They all want to be the frog team. That's what happens when you have boys in your class. But you can get them on Amazon in different shapes and sizes. One of our teachers has fly swatters that extend really long. The kids really like those. But I started with choosing the standard we were working on, and I wanted the kids wanted to assess the kids without them really knowing. And this is also a really great review game. Created different questions that assess those skills of directionality. And then I also tied in to the game our fun little guy, Alpha Bolt, who is a husky dog. That's our mascot that goes home with them. And they read to him and write about their week and draw a picture. So Alpha Bolt was visiting a friend in this question, and the friend was sick. I think they're going to the hospital here. And Alpha Bolt was southwest of the pond, so they had to find the building that was southwest of the pond. And they were able to find that it was the hospital. And they liked that they felt like they were detectives, and they got to go up to the board and kind of smack it without, causing a whole lot of sound or noise or anything like that. And then whoever smacked the one first would win. And as you can see, the team on the left, the frog team, got that answer correct, and they all cheered and got excited. A way to tie in biliteracy to this and advancing it in your classroom is using one of the maps that is maybe in Spanish or asking questions in a different language. You can also have students write their answers on a small dry erase board if they're sitting at the desk waiting, or if you have a piece of paper, that'll work just fine as well. Another thing I thought of was having that map either on their desk, laminated if you have that available to you, and then they can use a dry erase marker or a vis-a-vis marker and circle where they're supposed to go. And then if it's laminated, you can always reuse it, which is great. If I'm going too fast, please let me know. So then I use the board races, but also using the atlas on the board to label things. So I generated questions that met the learning target, created labels as my answers. I didn't laminate these. They're kind of hard to see, but just attach magnets to the back if you want to reuse them and they're laminated. I also use painter's tape because it doesn't stick and it's easy to get off. Well, it does stick, but it's easy to get off. But I have my atlas ready to go and project for when it's time for social studies. And then we put the magnet letters. They're kind of hard to see, but there's an N at the very top up here, right there, and then an S down here. So they had to put the compass up there. And then I would ask them questions like, so-and-so is at the tree grove, which is north of the pond, and they'd have to put the tree grove label where it belongs. But you can come up with all different kinds of whatever questions you want to reach that target, but also using even the Nystrom activities that are provided with each atlas. You can use the questions on that as well. All you need for this one is your online access to Nystrom World, and I used flashcards that we already had, cut them in half, wrote with a Sharpie what my answers would be, and some tape. Again, advancing with the biliteracy, you tie in either the questions you ask are in a different language or the second language or whatever language you all are working on to get to, or you create your questions, vice versa, all of that. But I find that using the board and them going up to the board, they really like to get up and move. My next one kind of goes the same way with the board atlas, If you have a desktop atlas or even a floor map, you taking those labels and creating them. You can use Post-it notes. I've used a label maker before, and just kind of cut those out, printed them, cut them out, and gave them to them in a baggie for them to use. Same kind of deal. You generate your questions, or you generate what your target is. If it's identifying the North and South Pole, if it's identifying a political boundary, if it's identifying cities, states, whatever it is, creating those labels really does help. And then they get to use their hands to stick them on. It's not just writing it all the time, or even your students could write and make their own labels and stick them on the map. Okay. My next one is Q&A matching, and this is actually something I kind of got from our 7th grade civics teacher. She uses a lot of things on her desk because her kids are much bigger. She doesn't have a lot of room in her classroom, and the materials that are more hands-on for the upper grades and for middle school, they think are kind of babyish sometimes, or at least the ones we have available to her. But she creates all her things on a computer, maybe types them out, and then cuts them out, hands them to them, and they create a Venn diagram on their desk, or they match questions and answers. So I thought of this one where you create your questions and your answers that you're assessing your students with. And you type or write them out, mix them up, put them in a baggie or a paper clip set, and then the students can manipulate, like, here are your questions. Maybe you put them on pink paper, red paper, and then your answers are on blue paper. So you have to match the question to the answer. They can also create their own questions and write them down and match them and have somebody else answer them, and then another group matches them. There are lots of different ways you can kind of mix this up. And that's what I kind of liked about it, is because it's not something that you have to have a particular material for. It's something that you can do with the materials that are readily available in most schools, which is paper, computers, pens, markers, things like that. And then my last one that I have is making a worksheet hands-on. My school, because of the demographic that I teach, worksheets are not always effective for them. They can't read the directions many times on their own. They can't really complete them on their own very much, because the directions are not written in a way that they, even if they can read it, understand what it's asking. So this was a worksheet that's on one of the in the activities. They had to color or circle the things made of wood. But what I thought of was this being a goods and services kind of deal, or expense cost. And so here I have things that they maybe would think cost a lot of money, things that maybe they think would not cost a lot of money, so they've split them up that way. I've also I also thought of, if you wanted to do the way that the worksheet worked, you sort them by material it's made out of, things like that, or where, tying into an atlas or a map, where can I get the materials for these types of products and goods. Lamination, again, will save you from having to color multiple times or print, and then you don't have to feel like you're wasting so much paper. Once you make one class set, you don't have to make it again. I usually keep materials that I use for a particular particular unit all together in one bin. So that is how I keep them organized. But all I needed here were my regular classroom supplies, scissors, and colored pencils. And then if I wanted to laminate these, I could, and then cut it out. So are there any other ways that you all see these kinds of things being able to be used in your classroom? And do you have any questions? I know I went through that kind of fast, so let's have kind of a conversation and feedback, because I find that when we all talk as educators together, that's usually when we all get our best ideas. So what do you all think? This is something that you all think you could use.
So I'll just go ahead since I can unmute myself. Sometimes it doesn't work for us all to talk together and we get some feedback and things, but do use that chat box, and I'm going to expand it
Yes.
down there at the bottom. But I definitely found one thing that really struck me is, when you think hands-on, you think just manipulating things, but I loved how you added in the movement too of them actually going up to the board or going somewhere and either slapping or pasting, because our students are not made to sit in desks all day. Goodness, it's hard for me to do at 40. So I really appreciate that, because it's sad but it's sometimes something that is hard and we don't think about, because it does take a little bit more prep. But like you said, once you get it, you have it done. So I am definitely, go ahead.
That's what I love about hands-on materials, is because once you've prepped it, you don't have to prep it again. You don't have to make copies, especially if you laminate. Like, I have a personal laminator and I use it all the time. I go through about, I want to say 200 sheets a year of lamination, but I use it on new activities. I'm never using it on the same activities, which is really great. But my students don't sit in their desk for more than 10 to 15 minutes at a time before I get them up and move them to something else, or we do a different activity where they've moved somewhere else. Using kind of like what I call the four corners of my room. I have a table that don't have a desk. I have a kidney table that we sit at. I have their desks, the board, then there's a carpet, and then I also will ask them like a this or that question, and we walk across the room, and then we go back to our hands-on activities or writing on paper, because it's still important to write on paper. I don't want to discount that, but I try to change things up as much as possible to just keep them engaged in their learning, because their focus quickly is gone if I don't.
Exactly, and they tune out. Melinda has something to say. So this activity would help on vocabulary matching. Absolutely.
Oh yes. Oh yes. You could have your your terms and your definitions. You could have, if you're doing, learning the Spanish word for map, and then you have map and match them that way, all kinds of things. And the best thing about it is, if you laminate it, you got it for the rest of the time that you teach that topic.
I was also noticing that you said this last making the worksheet hands-on, which I love. But that was in the Nystrom world. So you found that activity in Nystrom world related?
Yes, I did. I can't remember what page it's on, and let me look. I've got it pulled up on my tablet here. Let me pull that up. But I kind of scrolled through Nystrom World's activities, and this was one where I was like, oh, that's totally something I would do with my first graders. It's very important for them to know where things come from. But I believe this is in of course, it didn't go where I wanted it to go. And technology never does what you want it to do.
Right, right. But it's good to know that there are
Yeah,
pre-created activities in there that then
absolutely.
just be tried out easily, especially as people are getting used to maybe incorporating some of these things into their classroom and with their students.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always about, if it's something's already done for you and you do not have to go back and redo it, um, then why redo it?
Right.
Yes, I found this in this particular one you see on the screen in Nystronauts Atlas, and I found that on in their downloadable activities, and I'm pulling it up now. So, but I just kind of scrolled through. There were several activities like this, and it just kind of made it more fun. And then I can also use it for different questions. It doesn't have to just be the one activity or one question that they presented, which
Yeah.
is what here.
Right. And so adding that also could add in a collaborative component for students
Mm-hmm.
to work together. And like you said, just even getting up and moving if they have to put certain things in different areas depending on where the region maybe that they came from, or I think there are so
Right.
many ways you could go with this, and I love how you kept it's simple, but you had some really great activities which people could put in a lot of different topics with different grade levels. So
Yes.
wonderful ideas, I think. So does anyone else have anything else that they want to share today? I see Joni has just come on, and I hate that you came on kind of late, but we have recorded the session, so it will be on later. But right now, what we're talking about is just maybe some hands-on things that you do in your classroom already, or ways that you could see these activities being incorporated in your classroom. And we thank you again, Melinda, for responding there.
Yes. Yeah. Nystrom offers so many different activities that you can download and print to use in your classroom because I don't mind using paper, but I like to use things over again. I also like to have it where the kids can kind of move it and play with it and use it for other things. I find that making your worksheets, if you can turn it into something that's more hands-on, then that is something that they'll be able to remember. So this one was Goods Made of Wood. That was the title of it. It was Activity Sheet R, and it was the identify goods that are made of natural resources. And so I just cut them out and I colored them to make them a little more eye-catching, and then they moved them around on their desk. So
Wonderful.
yes, they like to move things and kind of sort things, which is really great when you need to organize your classroom. But this is great also for learning.
Yes, use what they enjoy, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Is there any
All right.
questions or are we?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm not seeing anything else coming through, but I surely appreciate everyone being here tonight. And thank you so much for coming. Joni, I'm sorry you came in a little bit on the tail end, but do remember once again that we have recorded the session and that will be available for you to watch. But thank you once again. Thank you so much, Catherine, for taking your time tonight and sharing with us and your unique situation. I'm just still
Thank you.
amazed. I learn from everybody. As you said, educators together are a powerful tool. So,
Absolutely.
so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.